Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Lori Davis, and you're listening to our show today, watching our show today. It is a beautiful spring day here in the great Canadian Northwest. No, we don't live in igloos all year round, and summer is just around the corner, and we are pretty excited about that. We're having a little challenge with one of our guests, so she's going to remove herself. And we have another guest that's probably going to land here at any time soon, so I will welcome her when she gets here. I'm excited and pleased today to have my very special friends, Dr. Randy Ward from the great state of Georgia, USA, and Sylvia Somerville from Grimsby, Ontario. And we're going to talk today the dynamics of grief and loss, part two. So if you missed part one, you can go into E360 TV. It's archived in there under my show name, and you can watch it at your leisure. If you're watching us live today, please feel free to make comments and ask questions. And we came together today because we've all had that experience of losing a loved one. And losing a loved one, wow, all the situations can be as different in the world, but the feelings seem to be universal. So I'm just going to ask each of the ladies, and I'll share too. Our first round of discussion and conversation, ladies, is who passed, and a little bit about how that happened. So can we start with you, Dr. Randy?
Yes, it was my husband of 48 years. I put him in the hospital on November 14th with double pneumonia, which was bad enough. And on December the 6th, they did a lung biopsy. On December the 9th, they told us that he had lung cancer. On December the 15th, he was gone.
Wow.
The pneumonia was so bad that even though they had done x-rays, they couldn't just see the lung cancer. And so they were shocked too, but it must have been stage 4. And all the months before that, when I would take him to the doctor, they told him it was bad allergies because we live in Atlanta with a lot of pollen. So I believed them. So obviously the shock of losing my husband after 31 days in the hospital, not expecting him not to come home was tragic and
Wow.
devastating.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm welcoming our guest, Gloria Gray Eyes. My apologies, Gloria, for not getting that link out to you right on time. And we're just doing our first round of discussion, Gloria, on who is it that passed in our life and how did that happen? So let's go over to you, Sylvia.
Thank you, Lori. My husband of 57 years had colorectal cancer. And of course, like any cancer, or usually with any cancer, it started to spread. And it ended up going all through his body. He did very well because he had treatments, and I was nursing him at home because he didn't want to go in the hospitals. At the end, he went in on a Friday, and by Tuesday morning, he had passed. But by this point, the cancer was all through him, and it had finally was in the brain. He was taking convulsions, and so for him, it was the best thing. Although for myself, after 57 years of marriage and 3 years of dating, it was devastating, as you realize.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Sylvia. And we'll get back to that. And over to you, Gloria Gray Eyes from Muskeg Lake Cree Nation in Saskatchewan, Canada.
Hi.
Over to you to talk a bit about, and maybe like 3 or 4 minutes to talk about who passed over in your world and what happened.
Okay. Hi, I am Gloria Gray Eyes from Muskeg Lake Cree Nation, Treaty 6 territory. This is the show for the loss and grieving, and
Yes.
So I've been asked to share a little bit about my experiences as a mom who has had 2 children, 2 sons, go on the spirit world. When my first son when people say the word lost, I lost my son, that's a different experience from when my second son left.
Well, she's having trouble too.
Um,
Yeah,
I'm sorry about that.
that's
Uh,
okay.
the first time I was lost. I was totally lost. I was in my mind and in my heart. I had done something so terrible in my life to somebody that why I must have been being punished with this pain I felt, because I felt the physical pain of it all. And
So which son was that? Just tell us about the
that's
boys and
Kevin.
how they
That's
passed.
my son Kevin.
Mhm.
And so, like anybody who's lost, like in their mind, they're lost in their heart and their spirit. I did, I went to the drugs and the alcohol and the living a not so good life and all that stuff. And then, for a bit, and then I went on a healing journey, and I've been on it since. And that's been like maybe 25, 30 years of healing. And then now, 2 years ago, my son, my oldest son, Shem, he left to the spirit world. But between then and now, I have learned that it wasn't anything I had to do. I hadn't done anything to anybody. I hadn't done anything. I don't have the power to do anything to take a life like that little baby.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah. So she's having some challenges there. So I'll just start. Um, I lost my first husband at 34. He he attempted suicide twice in a week, went into a mental institution where he lived for 2 years, came out, and disappeared. And he's been on a missing persons list since 1986. And this is someone that I knew as a child. We were childhood friends. The families were very tightly knit. And this came as a big shock because he was not an addict or anything like that. So, but little did we know that he had a lot of unstable emotional issues that had never been addressed or resolved. His dad passed when he was only 11, and I would say that was the beginning of the end for him. So that's been a long time ago now. He was in the hospital about, I don't know, a couple of months. And then he went in September. And then on the 6th of December, that date, I've heard that date already on today's show. On the 6th of December, my little niece, Erin Margaret Anthony, got off her school bus, and the school bus driver ran her down and killed her. And so we had these two tragedies in my family um, at the same time. And so when Christmas came, we were all just sitting around, and we'll talk about the aftermath in a bit. But those were my two closest in my adult life. So we've all been there, huh? So let's
Yes,
talk
very
about,
much so.
yeah. So, when you lose your partner, let's go there first because Gloria will share more if she gets back on around the children. Um, of course, when this happened to my sister, not to my sister, but to my niece, I then moved my focus to my sister, not my husband, because I thought I can get another husband, but you can't replace a child. You could have 20 kids, and none of them would be the same. That's how I felt about it.
That's right.
Right. So before we go on, let's see, we have a comment here, and it might be Virginia. Yeah. Oh, thank you all. Um, and Virginia, may, if I can speak on her behalf, lost her dad last year, and then her granddad, and I believe an auntie, all very close together. And that's what she was going to talk about today. So, all right, Gloria, back to you. Just briefly, your second son was your first son. He was a baby, right, when he passed?
And then my oldest son, in 2 years ago, he was 38 years old, and he passed away. And he was on obviously he had his life journey, um, and he made bad choices younger in life that he paid for later in life. And I was with him all the time at the hospital. Every time he would get sent to the ICU, I would take off the Regina and I would go and sit with him because his wife had to look after the kids. So she wouldn't be able to go there. And I didn't want him.
I'm not sure what's going on with her internet. Okay, well, our second round, let's talk about, I don't know for sure if we in the Western world have ever really been properly taught how to grieve. We don't have ceremonies or traditions or even know how that grieving process works. So it's very challenging for us sometimes if we haven't had that kind of training or we haven't done that kind of work. So let's go to you, Dr. Randy. Wow, that was a shocker. And
Yes.
and how, let's say right after, like the next 2 or 3 months, how are you handling that? What did the aftermath look like for you?
Well, let me say this about me. I'm a very strong woman. I've survived a car accident in which I had 8 broken bones, 8 months of physical therapy. I knew how to handle that. I didn't walk for 5 years of my life as a kid. I've taught myself to walk so many times. I could handle that. I couldn't handle this. I felt like it was my fault that he had passed. I blamed the doctors. I even blamed God until I'd read in the Bible that on the day you were born, the day you were going to die has already been predetermined. I had to accept that. But I was a mess. I was crying hysterically all the time. And of course, several months after his death, COVID shut down the world. But at first, I tried so much to find answers to help me. I even attended a local church grief group, and I discovered that even though I was a mess, there were people that were a bigger mess than I was. So I felt, so as a teacher, I was helping them instead of really helping myself. I was becoming the mother to them, and I wasn't really healing. And then when we had to go in our homes, and I was stuck with my St. Bernard, I love her, but in my home with my St. Bernard, I did a virtual grief counselor. And after about 3 sessions, she said, Randy, you don't need me. You're doing okay. And I said, no, I don't feel like I'm doing okay. But my answer was, I heard I got on this teleconference about becoming a coach. This was like in March. And from April until July 1st, I became certified in 4 coaching things. And I promised my husband that I would move forward with my life and continue to live my life to the fullest. And so I became a book writing consulting coach and master editor, starting my 6th career at that time. And that was like my salvation. It was like a message from God saying, you've got to pick yourself up. You've got so much talent and so much to give to the world. Do this. And so that's what I'm doing now. But it was hard.
Wow. Yeah, because 2 years ago, that's not that long ago,
Yeah.
Still pretty
Exactly.
fresh, right? Still pretty fresh. All right, Sylvia, after Ray passed, what happened with you the first little while?
Well, I consider myself a very strong person, having been through a lot. But when he passed, I was completely devastated.
Yeah.
I met him when I was 17. We dated 3 years, the only person I dated, married at 21, 57 years later. And I mean, I had nursed him, but I had given up all my work. I was publishing a monthly periodical, etc. I was, in business. I was still writing. And when I got thinking about it, like right after he died, I sat in a chair in the living room. And I kind of I kept telling myself, well, just close your eyes and go to sleep. And I kept saying, I don't want to wake up. I don't want to wake up because I can't handle this. In January of that same year, my mother passed. Mind you, she was 99, but nevertheless, I lost her.
Yeah.
In
Right.
February, I lost my only aunt. In March, I lost my best friend since childhood, and we were always together. And then in April, I lost Ray, my husband. And this just seemed to be, I just thought, I can't handle any of this. I'm just going to sleep and I don't want to wake up. I didn't sleep in my bedroom for 2 years.
Oh,
I couldn't go back in the bedroom because when I did, I'd see him. So what I did after I used to give myself talkings too. A lot of them times it didn't work, but I kept, you kept trying. So finally I wrote the book Lost Behind the Wind Echoes. It was a book of poetry, and I put everything into it because I thought, you know what, this could help someone else like me.
Mhm.
You have to know it's okay to cry. It's okay to get really angry, and it's okay to just feel you are lost. I felt like I was drifting, and I didn't know where I was going to be in the first the first 4 years after he died. I moved 3 times. But I had to realize that I was moving because I was trying to run away from memories, but you can't do that.
no.
That's when I sat down and I wrote the book Lost Behind the Wind Echoes. I bared my soul in that book. And when I read it back, I thought, oh my God, everybody's going to know, what I'd been going through. And I didn't really want to have sympathy or anything. It's something we all go through. So I did it anyway. I published it. And so many people emailed. It sold very well. And so many people emailed and said they really appreciated it because they thought they were going crazy because they couldn't work. Silly things like you can't sleep in your bedroom or things like that. So that made me feel better knowing that out of this devastation, something was going to come of it.
Right.
And I'll close in saying that same year, then in December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, my grandson passed away. So that 2016 is a year I just want to just erase it.
Yes.
Mhm.
But I found my solace in writing, and I usually do.
Yes.
And that's why I'm an author, illustrator, publisher. It's what I am.
Mhm.
So, and I
I
know
find comfort in writing too, Sylvia. So I'm like that. And I wrote a book, an anthology, Quarantine and Beyond, and I wrote about my husband's death and how it affected me. So I'm the same way. Writing is very cleansing and healing for me too.
right. Well, that's why I did it in poetry because it's not a topic that if you get into the details like you can in poetry, if you were to put that in actual paragraphs, people wouldn't read past the first page.
That's right.
They'd think it was too depressing. But when you use words in poetry and verse, you touch the bad and you make the good a little bit longer, and you can keep varying the moods and the tones. And that's why I used my
Yes.
book of poetry.
Cool.
Love it.
Well, for me in 1984, I wasn't a writer, but I became a workaholic. And when this thing happened with my niece, first of all, my husband, if you have, that's why I totally understand the missing and murdered Indigenous women and missing kids and all of that, because there was no funeral, there was no closure. And we didn't know where he went. So also too, the shame that's attached to suicide, especially back in 1984, when mental health was really just for people that were crazy and you put them in an asylum. This is where he lived for 2 years. Every time I'd be in the vehicle or the car and I would see somebody on the side of the road, especially a young man or a man, I always looked to see if it was him. And I also lied to people outside my family. They all knew what had happened. But if I would go out with a bunch of girlfriends for the evening and, guys would come up to us and, are you single? Are you married? Blah, blah, blah. I would always say I'm widowed. And they would say, well, how did your husband pass away? And I would lie so I wouldn't have to talk about it and tell them that he had been killed in a really bad car accident. But 7 years later, that denial reared its ugly head and I crashed big time. And that's probably why I do the work that I do. But yeah, there was no, I went to a counselor once, but that didn't cut it for me. He was not altogether himself. That's when you have unhealthy people helping unhealthy people, which is
Yeah.
a big problem for me. So yeah, it was a devastating time, and I not only lost my niece, I also lost all of his side of the family. We were all, friends and hung out and all of that. And some of the family blamed me for what happened. And, I couldn't go there. So I lost a whole lineage of people that had been in my life all my life. And so it was pretty devastating, to say the least. So I just buried myself in my career. I was in sales and marketing, and I had finished, I had actually, that was the year also that I retired from teaching and wanted to become an entrepreneur full time. And that happened. We had made plans financially and otherwise for me to leave. I put in my resignation in April, and then this all happened in the summer. Oh, Virginia has asked the question, how long did it take for me to stop looking? I still do.
I bet.
And my husband, Ron, and I, we've been together now 32 years. When we moved to the West, we even had a conversation about it that, well, maybe he's here. Or if I would go on a holiday to a different country or a place, I thought maybe he's here, because we don't really know. He left he was living with his sister, and he left her place to go to visit his brothers for the weekend, and he never got there. And they were the ones who actually called the police and said, he's supposed to be here. We can't, and he's not. So they found his car and some personal belongings. And I got a call, and they asked me if I'd seen him. And I said, yes, actually, I saw him 3 weeks ago, because when he got out of the hospital, he wanted to see me. So we spent a day together, and that was the last time I saw him. But it was kind of like making the peace, this wasn't your fault. I'm so sorry. This had nothing to do with you. But as Gloria would say, that was his decision, his journey, his trip. And I know people find that hard to believe sometimes, but that we would choose death. But some people do.
I know.
Some people do. So what are some ways that we all have managed to move forward? How did we manage that? Because I know people who will be watching the show, they want to hear our story, but they also want to hear about how did we get past all that? And here we are, 3 women writing books, doing our business, traveling, going places. Sylvia's going to come to Alberta and do several writers' retreat workshops, where we've got clients who want to come and learn how to write a book and to start with. And we're going to do it in person with a small group so that they all get the attention that they need, and we can't wait. And I have 20 books also, but none of them published. A little bit here and a little bit there, because that's just one of my stories, my husband's passing. So Randy, talk to us about, you did a variety of things, but let's talk to give encouragement that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay. Well, I think social media helped me a lot, because when you're stuck in the house and you can't get out, I have a lot of friends here, but you couldn't see them. So I know it's crazy. I have 5,000 Facebook friends in 63 countries. I've been in 61 countries, so I'm a global person anyway. So I connected with these people, and they would cheer me up. We wouldn't talk about death, and we wouldn't talk about anything sad. It was just getting to know each other. So that helped me a lot. Also, when I was able to get out, I joined a lot of groups, like all of us are members of GSFE, Global Society for Female Entrepreneurs, but I'm also a member of Bologna, Ladies of All Nations International in the UK, and she inspires me and all this. So I started connecting with a lot of amazing, powerful, strong women like myself, who had been through traumas and things in their lives too. But together, we supported each other. And it's very important, especially for women and men too, to find a support group of genuine people that that you can go to and know that whatever you're going to say is not going to go any farther. And if you're having a bad day, it's okay. If you're having a great day, that's even better. But they're going to accept you for who you are and not judge you. So I don't like to be in groups where I'm being judged. Okay. I'm basically a happy person. I smile a lot. My husband said, you have to smile, you have to be happy, and smiling comes naturally to me. So that helps me. Also, like you, Laurie, I am a workaholic. So I work all the time. I do it for my writing. I'm an editor now, so I've edited a lot of books. It keeps me busy. I love the Hallmark Channel because it has happy endings. And when I write, my stories have to have happy endings too. So I just try to find things that are positive in my life and avoid any negativity. People that are negative teach me a lesson. Avoid them, but I somehow, as carefully as I can, without hurting them, eliminate them from my life, because I try to not have any negativity in my life, because you don't need that. There's, if you look at the news, it's so disgusting and so depressing. So I just try to stay in a positive mode with positive people. So that's my advice. Try to remain as positive as you can. Get a group that you love that are positive and support you. And I think you can get through almost anything if you do that.
Thank you so much. Yes, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself, but I'll add a few things after we hear from Sylvia. And then we'll come back to you, Dr. Randy, because I have another question I'm going to ask everybody. Apologize for our two guests, Virginia Clark and Gloria Gray Eyes. They're having internet issues, but we've got very high winds here right now. And when you live in a rural area, that impacts your internet capacity. But we'll do just great, the three of us, because we all love to chat and talk. And over to you, Sylvia. What are some things you've done to move forward?
Well, as I said, the first was to write that book, and I probably got 20 or 30 books too, waiting to be finished and printed. I think we all do, because you sit down to work on one thing and all these other thoughts come. So you think, well, I'll put that anyway. I found that during the first 3 years, I was a long time getting over it. During the first 3 years, I had still been going out with the friends, go out for lunch with the girls, and I was always smiling, and they'd say, so how you doing? I said, oh, I'm great, and I wasn't. But see, they can't help you if they don't know that you need help.
Yes.
So I would say, don't hide within yourself. Come right out to your friends and say, when you have a bad day. And when I started doing that, then it was kind of, to me, it showed that was the right thing to do, because my friends would say to me, sometimes they would call and say, you busy? No. Oh, I had such a bad day. And they start telling me what's going wrong and bad in their life. So it helps, because you start supporting each other. And I think that's what you need to, you can't hide. You have to get out there and be a part of things like, and I did the same. I already belonged to a few groups, and I was volunteering at the local hospital, running the gift shop and whatnot. So I got back to all that, and just going about writing mostly. Like I said, I moved a lot, but it was a girlfriend that sat me down and said to me, because I was saying, I think I got to move again. And she actually sat me down. This is one that talks for hours and hours on the phone. And she said, why are you moving again? She said, you could move every week and it's not going to make a difference.
No.
And that kind of, in my mind, it resonated with me. And I thought, you know what? In my mind, I made it. It's how I dealt with it. I thought, like, we all have dragons in our life, bad situations. The dragons are out there, and we have to slay them. So each time I would accomplish something or, get past an issue, I would be saying to myself, okay, one more dragon I've slayed. And it worked till now. I don't have any dragons to slay that I'm aware of. I'm enjoying life, like Laurie was saying. I'm coming out there to teach the writers' workshops, and that's, to me, this is what's my saving feature, I think. I was always into writing. I was in business, as I said. I was running the newspaper. I was putting out the periodical. I was editing for another magazine and publishing other people's books. And all that came to a stop when I started nursing Ray. So then when he died, like I was saying, your world ended. Like, what do I do now? I don't have my business anymore. I don't have Ray. I don't have my mother, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that was the main thing I had to get past. And I put it all down to friends. And Lori contacted me one day. I think it had been 4 years after he passed. And I took her wellness course. And it just helped me find me again. Only now I'm a lot better than I was before. And it's all up from here on.
Yes.
And if I might add in the end, this just one last thing. Everyone kept saying, Ray's in a good place, Ray's in heaven. And when I thought back to the night he died, I had been sitting with him for 3 days. He hadn't moved. He had the oxygen on. He hadn't moved. He hadn't opened his eyes. The middle of that night at 3:15 in the morning, actually, out of the blue, he just sat bolt upright and his hands were outstretched. And of course, I jumped up. Do you need a blanket? Are you cold? I thought, oh, he's getting better. He woke up. But he didn't see me. He was reaching to something I couldn't see. And he had that beautiful smile on his face that I fell in love with years and years ago. And he just looked forward. He laid down. And then as I sat there, I felt him. He was getting cold. And the doctor came, and I think that was the moment he died. And that made me feel good. It makes me feel, because I know that was angels coming for him.
Right.
And to me, that's why now I can go ahead.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
My blessing was that I wasn't there with my husband. I couldn't do that. I'd watched him slowly die for 31 days, not even knowing this was happening until the weekend before. And so a couple of adult children of my best friend were there with him, and they said he died a peaceful death. But my blessing is that I could be with him those 31 days. If it had been a couple months later, COVID would have shut that down and I wouldn't have been able to be with him. And also, even though obviously he'd had the lung cancer for a while, he was functioning until those 31 days I put him in the hospital. Okay. So it was quick. He didn't suffer with the lung cancer for years and years and years because he would have hated that. And we made the decision, both of us, for him to go that day. In front of 3 nurses and one of my best friends, I gave him an option because he was told in the next couple of days he would either suffocate, die of a heart attack, or die of a stroke. There was 0% chance of survival. Okay. So I said, okay, you can wait, see what happens, or we can just slowly remove the oxygen and you can just go to sleep and you'll never wake up and see me again. And he was conscious until they put him to sleep. He chose option number 2, just to go to sleep. So again, I had the thing that I didn't have to make the decision. We made the decision together because he knew there was no hope. Mm-hmm. He was not in denial. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done. But you know what? I didn't cry because I had to be brave for him. And I know he died peacefully because my friends told me that. So that's a blessing. But if I'd seen him, I think I would have freaked out. I don't want to have that memory in my mind. So like a lot of people have to be there, I couldn't be there. That was not for me.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's important for people to know, that we all have our own way to process information.
Yes.
And, people had said to me, well, how could you get married again, with that hanging over your head? I said, well, darling, I'm like Joan Collins. And I'll try anything 5 times before I say it's a bad idea. But yeah, and it was it was different because there was no funeral. So I don't
No.
know. So that's a whole different experience, right?
Mhm.
And the thing that I learned to do, I didn't do it right away, was the more I told the story, the faster I healed.
Yes.
I can talk
Yes.
about this today and not shed a tear. It's like I'm talking about
Yes.
somebody else. There's no shame attached to it. I haven't put myself through a big guilt trip. And especially when you're dealing with suicide or suicide
Yes.
attempts, the guilt trip is unbelievable. And especially if it's your children, that's even worse, right? Because I don't think that his mom was ever the same again after that. I'm sure she wasn't. And so, yes, talking about it, writing about it, sharing it with people,
Mhm.
there's no shame in that. So when I came out of hiding 7 years later, right, then I started talking about it and how it impacted me in my life. And that's what I would say to people. Just find somebody that will listen and just tell the story because it's a story,
Right.
but it's real.
Yes.
It's not a fake story. It's not fiction. It's nonfiction.
Yes.
All right. Any other thoughts, ladies, coming up around? Because we have people who will be watching the show who are either they've lost somebody, they're losing somebody, or they're going to lose somebody. And how do we harness our personal greatness to be able to ride that wave?
Well, my philosophy is that I'm still alive and God has chosen to let me still live. And if I sit here and waste my life because of the loss of Bill, that's doing an injustice to the God-given gift that, of life. Okay. So I wake up every morning and I count my blessings. I've been through a lot of my life, but I can always find something that I'm grateful for. And at the end of the day, I'm still smiling. I've lived my day to the fullest I could. I've always been busy. I never stop, which is kind of crazy. I know I forget how to relax, but that's okay. But when I get done, I've got, okay, I've done something good today. I helped some people. I did something good for me. And I think God is pleased that I'm still on my journey to rediscover all the things that I can do and all the things that I can be. And I'm 73 years old, going on 26 in my head, and hope to be around at 100 years. And if that on my last day to be doing something amazing and helping people and then just drop dead. That's how I want to go. So, because I'm not going to give up on my life. I promised Bill on his deathbed before we made the decision, I was not going to grieve to death. And I did grieve for months, but I had to move on with my life. And as Laurie knows, I have found true love again. And I hope to be a June bride and honeymoon in South Africa in July. So life goes on. I'm just going to start a second chapter. So you don't want to, there's not, the book is not ending. We just start another chapter in my life.
Excellent. And congratulations.
Thank you.
And Dr. Randy and I discovered we're only 7 days apart. We're in the same
Yes.
year.
Yes.
And she's a week older than I am. We could have been twins, maybe.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Sylvia, looking down the road towards the future and what's happening now? And what
Well,
else would you tell people? What else would you say to a grieving widow?
it's going to be hard, and there's you have to just write it out until you're ready, because
Yes.
there is no time limit on grief.
No.
We all grieve differently, and we all do things differently. But I think you have to talk about it. Make sure when
Yes.
friends say to you, "How are you doing?" Don't do like I did in the beginning and say, "Oh, I'm just great. I'm super. I'm fine," because they sincerely want to know how you're doing.
Right.
And then they talk to you about it. You might say, "Oh, I saw this or I saw that." I still have a girlfriend online in the UK. I've never met her. We've been talking for 20 years, and she
Mhm.
just lost her son. And she sent me an email not long ago and said, she said, I have to thank you because when her and I were talking a lot about when Ray passed, she says, I bring back all those conversations. And she said, it's helping me with the loss of Danny. I think you just have to talk about it. You have to share it.
Mhm.
We're going to cry a lot.
Mhm.
Even it's very rare now, but in the beginning, you'd watch a movie, or I might be in the supermarket and you see someone that you haven't seen in years, and they'd say, "How's Ray?" And you have to
Mhm.
say,
Yeah,
all those things are going to happen.
right.
You just have to take it within you, be strong, and look for support because there's support everywhere around you. Your friends want to help you, so be open about it.
Right.
And I don't know if we have time. I was going to just say quickly with a few weeks before Ray passed, he knew he was dying. He dictated a letter to his PSW because we had a PSW coming in every morning to shower him and whatnot. And in it, I won't go into everything in it, but he said he regretted not being able to go to Africa with me.
Mhm.
I've been on many safaris, and he said, you got to do one thing for me.
Yes.
Take some of my ashes, go back to Africa, and drop them. Well, that's not really legal. So I got a compact, the old fashioned compact where you had loose powder, and I put some ashes in there, covered it, had it in my purse just as a compact. And when we were out on game drives and whatnot in 2017, you get out and you walk around a little bit when they stop to stretch your legs. And I just have my hand in my pocket and I'm sprinkling this ashes everywhere.
Oh.
And
That's good. That's good.
in my mind and heart, I figured, okay, Ray, here you are. You're in Africa.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
But yeah,
Yes.
Ironically, the last trip Bill and I made was to Africa in
Wow.
2019. And
Wow.
his ashes are in my sunroom, and I actually go in there and talk to him sometimes. I feel his spirit still around me, and
Yeah.
that's very comforting.
Yeah.
it
For
is.
sure. For
I have
sure.
it the same. But I
Yeah.
don't have, I used to have his ashes out, but I don't anymore.
Right.
About a year and a half ago, I put them away because he doesn't want me sitting there talking to him. He's in heaven. He's having fun.
Right.
Eating,
Yes.
he's where he should be, and I'm where I should be, and I should be going forward like I am now.
Yes.
And his ashes are in a box. They're in a box, and the kids know where they are when the time comes.
Yes. Yes.
But
Right.
I think that's as it should be, and I believe it was Lori had suggested that, and I thought, oh, I don't know if I can, but I did it, and I was so happy.
Yes.
Right.
So
Well, for me, I just recently too lost one of my most precious cousins in Nova Scotia. He was 67, only diagnosed with his lung cancer, and then 6 weeks later he passed. And just a super guy, super family guy, my cousin Bruce Jack, and we were all devastated by this because he's a big family man and left a beautiful wife and grown kids and little grandkids. And anyway, I just was thinking about him. But at his funeral, they streamed his funeral, and I think it's all right to repeat it because it went live. And he knew he was passing, and I guess the minister, the pastor, said to him, well, and my cousin was a fisherman. He spent his whole life on the ocean.
wow.
So the pastor, and this would be my cousin's sense of humor, the pastor asked him, what do you want us to do with your ashes? Probably you'd like them spread out on the ocean. And my cousin said, are you kidding me? I spent my whole life on that ocean, and I am not going there now. And, but that would be my cousin Bruce. And I think one of the things that keeps us going and keeps me going too are reliving those wonderful, wonderful times. Because Keith and I were avid travelers. We made, trips to Europe, and I was a teacher and he took the summers off and we'd travel. And so I just focus on those kinds of things. We bought and sold houses and built houses and all the beautiful things that we did together, and let that be a reminder of how that supported me and how that
Yes.
caused me to
Yes.
grow so much. And my parents were together 67 years. My mom was 16 and my dad was 26, home from the war. And they got married and they had a 67-year relationship. And
Wow.
like you, Sylvia, my mom had a difficult time just settling down. You know, she'd get into a place and that wouldn't be what she wanted, and so on and so on. But she's doing much better now. That was 2016. So, yeah, so we lose our parents, we lose our kids, we lose, well, Gloria, if she was here, would argue with me because she would say, Lori, we don't lose anybody. In my case, maybe a little different. But when you have a funeral and they pass over, you know exactly where they are, and that brings a lot of comfort.
Right.
So yeah, that's for sure. So we've got about 10 minutes left, and why don't we take the time that's left and have you each promote yourself? You're authors, you're writers, you're speakers, you've accomplished things. So this would be when I was a kindergarten teacher. Every Friday, this is a good story too, and then I'll turn it over to you. Every Friday we would have show and tell, or bring and brag. I called it bring and brag. So I had this darling little girl. I'll never forget her. And she had cerebral palsy, but she was very bright, just handicapped, on one side. And so this one particular Friday, she brought her dad for show and tell. And her dad was a city police officer. And of course, he was in his uniform, all decked out. So she said, today I brought my dad because I wanted everybody to see his big gun.
Wow.
So I would like you to bring and brag for the next, maybe each take 3 or 4 minutes each, and just share with the world out there, because we are survivors. We are strong. What's within us is greater than what is without us, outside of us, right? So let's go to you first, Sylvia, and just share and brag and promote.
Well, when I was 6 years old, I was deaf in my left ear from an ear infection. Kids are cruel. What did I do? I became a loner. I went home, I drew little pictures, and I started writing stories. In essence, that was the beginning of my writing. That was my road to being an author. And I wrote and did everything seriously from that point on. I've had to date probably around 20, 22 books published. That's not counting a series of 8 children's books. 4 of the series are published. The other 4 will be published shortly. And as I said, I have a book about life called Life is Jigsaw Puzzle. And that will be coming out soon. I have my books of poetry. And what really has been selling good is I wrote a book about my African safaris. I did African safaris every year from 78 till 90. I used to go every year and spend a few months there. And that book, it was called Dark Sun, Dry Rain, and it's selling really well now because the first story apparently is what's selling it, about this encounter with the lioness. And I do get comments on email, did that really happen? And I said, yes, it did. And it could only happen to me because I said, and it's a fact, whenever I was in Africa among the animals, I when I look back, I think, that was so stupid. But I said they didn't attack me because they saw me as this dumb blonde. When I was there in 2017, there was only 2 of us in the game jeep. The one girl, she was, always hitting on this ranger. And she's talking to him about the lions. And we had watched this pack of lions run down a gazelle, drag it into the bush, and they were eating it. And then they laid around, and we were just sitting in the jeep. They're talking, and I thought, oh, forget this. I climbed out of the jeep over the back, took my camera. I got excellent video. And I went in there and I'm taking video of these lions. And when I started, there's one in
Yeah.
the video, and you see him look right at, he stops cleaning himself and he looks right at me. And I'm thinking, maybe this isn't such a good idea. And I couldn't run because and then he laid down, but you could see, even though he laid down behind this bush, you could see his eyes looking right at me. So
Right.
instead of going forward, I started walking sideways. I was going to go over to these trees and then kind of back up slow and get back to the Jeep. So I got video, and at one point, you see in the video, the camera will jump because as I'm going sideways and I'm watching him, I heard something and looked, and I swear to you, now 4 feet from me was another big lion sleeping. So I backed up and I went back and I was climbing back into the Jeep. I had trouble because getting out was easier. I dropped down, right? So
Mhm.
getting in, I had to kind of put my leg around to the side of the bars,
Mhm.
and the ranger caught me in the rear view mirror. And he says, "What are you doing?" He says, "You can't get in the Jeep." And I said, "Oh, okay, I won't." He didn't know I was on the way back.
So you see, that's how when I tease Sylvia, because we just had a story, and that's a story. I got the whole picture. I could see you in that thing, and I could see
Yes.
those lions, and that's so beautiful. So, anything else you want to promote before I
No,
turn
it's
the
just
mic
my
over?
writing. That's it, my books, and our workshops.
Oh, our retreats,
Our
yes.
workshop retreats, they are
Oh,
going to be amazing.
I'm going to be your first client.
And
Mhm.
we're going to teach everyone how to write these interesting best-selling books because everyone has a story.
That's
Very
true.
Most
Or
people
more
have,
than one.
yeah,
Yes.
and they just don't know how to get it out there. So
Yeah.
we're
Yes.
going to teach them how to do it.
All right. Thank you, Sylvia, for being here today, and thank you
You're
for
welcome.
sharing your stories and your life. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Randy.
Okay, well, I'm a woman that grew up very, very shy. My father was an alcoholic and told me every day of my life growing up I was ugly and no man would love me. So my husband, Bill, was my earthly savior. He made me believe I was beautiful and loved. Okay, so another reason he was so special to me. But I taught in American schools, West Virginia and Georgia, for 37 plus years. Then went to Egypt in 2011 and 12 to teach English as a second language. Little did I know, a week after I got there, the second revolution would start, and I would be living 3 blocks from Tahrir Square, the center of the revolution. Many nights I would listen to people die half a block from my house in gun battles between the military police and the protesters. When I came home, I wrote my first book, my memoir, Because I Believed in Me, My Egyptian Fantasy Came True, of an English teacher who lived in a revolution. But I had a great experience. I mean, it wasn't all violence and all that. I learned to become an Egyptian woman and take care of myself. So that started my writing career. I write in all genres: poetry, short stories for children and adults. I'm a blogger, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a magazine editor for 2 magazines, plus I contribute to them. I'm the only thing I haven't done a screenplay or a play yet, but that's coming. Okay. My first novel that I wrote during a car accident that I had is coming out. It's being printed right now. Okay. So along with becoming an author, and I'm an international best-selling author in 8 books, 4 of those that I actually edited as well. I became an international speaker. I've spoken in 12 countries, either virtually or in person. I'm also it became like I said, after my husband's death, I told you earlier that I became a book writing consultant, coach, and master editor. So like you, Sylvia, I teach people how to write their stories because I taught writing for 37 years in American public schools. So I know how to do that. Just never had time to write until I retired. I'm also the chancellor of a New World University that was founded in Nepal, and I just went to Dubai in January to give out honorary doctorates to a couple of people from Bangladesh and Nepal. Also, let's see, I'm trying to think what else I want to say. I was named Educator of the Decade by International Association of Top Professional. I have 3 honorary doctorates. I have a humanitarian award from the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Was named superhero by Loney. I have a Lifetime Achievement Award from the President of the United States, President Biden. I have so many awards that it's just unbelievable. I was named the top alumna of my university, Marsh University, and just got celebrated in a big 200-person dinner on April 1st, which was one of my big honors because it's one of those organizations where they don't want anything from you. You know what I'm saying? Your university is actually honoring you. So all the awards I've gotten, I'm very proud of, but I'm also very humbled by them because I think I'm just an average woman who happens to dream bigger because my life philosophy is believe, don't dream big, dream bigger. The sky is the limit, so reach for the stars. And now I'm even believing that the sky is not the limit. I've even reached farther than the stars now. And as I said, I just keep reinventing myself. I have a new company now called RM Infinite One Stop Possibilities with my future husband. And we do marketing and editing and book publishing and whatever you want. It's one stop possibilities. We're going to find a way to do it for you. So we're going to do that. And as I said, I hope to be a new bride, a new wife in June. So I'm moving forward and trying. Every time I look up to the skies, I'm doing this for you too, Bill. I mean, I want him to be so proud of me. He always was. But a lot of the things I'm doing are in honor of my husband, my late husband, because he said, you go for it, girl. I know you can do whatever you want. He made me believe that. And I'm doing it. And that's what I want all women and men to do. Believe you can do anything you want. Use your talents. They're there. God gave them to you. Don't waste your talents. You know, don't be afraid. I'm a risk taker. Take those risks. Sometimes you fail, but most of the time you'll win. So that's my advice to everybody.
Oh, goody. Yay. Thank you so much, ladies. And of course, I'm the same. I don't know. Life has thrown me some pretty big boomerangs, but I just keep getting up and dusting myself off and moving forward. My husband, Ron, had a stroke, a massive stroke about 10 years ago. He's fine right now. He's cool. And we were about to take on a big retreat center. And we were home in Nova Scotia visiting family for Christmas. And we went out to lunch. He had been hospitalized and he was just barely walking, barely talking. And I said, well, gee, Ron, I don't know. I don't think we should go home and take on that building and blah, blah, blah. And he looked at me and he said, oh, did you have the stroke?
Yeah. Right.
And I said, no. Well, he said, then what's the problem?
Yes.
So yes, like yourself, I've been totally encouraged by both of my husbands, actually. And they both helped me to get ahead. And there was one in the middle that didn't. So, you know, it's trial and error. And that's why I said, I'm like Joan Collins. I'll try anything 5 times before I say it's a bad idea. Ladies, thank you so very much. This has been such a joy, even though we wanted to speak about something that a lot of people aren't able to even talk about. So thank you for being here. Love to welcome you back another time and have a great rest of the day. Bye for now, everybody.
God bless everybody.